Strange and uncertain times.
Look around. Strongman politics are ascendant, suddenly, whereby elections and some pretense of democracy are maintained, the form of it, but those in power seek to undermine every institution or norm that gives democracy meaning.
You could say he's talking about Putin. Russia has elections that aren't really elections. You could say he's talking about Turkey. Erdogan just won an election that wasn't actually an election. And strongman, is he talking about Trump?
I think so. I think that he is under a lot of pressure from Democratic activists, you know, to speak out more. And this week I've been thinking, remember his comment that was picked up on a mic that he had more flexibility after the election, and Republicans really went after him for that. And now, you know, he has to be sitting there looking at that press conference from this week and going, talk about flexibility.
I would say I think he may be talking about him on the institutions front once he's been in office, but I am not sure about the election part, because I think President Obama is one of few very dedicated Democratic activists who really knows well that Hillary Clinton lost that election, and he feels confident that he handed it to her in pretty good situation.
You are correct on that point. There is no doubt here when the former president, President Obama, again in South Africa today, talking about, he says the free press is under attack. There is zero doubt. He's talking about, he includes President Trump in this.
The denial of facts runs counter to democracy. It could be its undoing, which is why we have to zealously protect independent media. And we have to guard against the tendency for social media to become purely a platform for spectacle and outrage and disinformation.
It's quite the contrast to the current president, who says that those of us at this table are the enemy of the state.
It's true that it's a contrast. You know, my beef with the Democrats on this front is that you know, the Obama administration was not friendly to the press, and yet they seize on these Trump things, which he is more hostile in terms of his rhetoric. It's questionable whether his actions are more hostile, and I don't think that Democrats in many cases have taken full account to the ways in which they contributed to you know, some of the disgraces that have taken place in the Trump administration.
That's it.
One of the president's long-standing laments about the press is that, as he always used to put it, even before Trump, we're no longer operating from a common baseline of facts. And I think he mentioned in that speech that, you know, there used to be shame and accountability when politicians were caught in a lie, and that doesn't happen so much anymore. That's one of the consequences. There are many positive consequences of the democratization of the media. That seems to be one of the negative.
Well, let me sneak one more in. Is this true, or is it funny, or is it both?
Let me say, politicians have always lied. But it used to be if you caught them lying, they'd be like, oh, man. Now they just keep on lying. They just...
With my experience, there's truth to that. I think that people used to be more chagrined, and you can embarrass them into retracting statements, and now they just double down.
Keep on going. Keep on going. Thanks for joining us today on Inside Politics. Hope to see you back here this time tomorrow. Jim Sciutto is in for Wolf. He starts right now. Have a great day.
Hello, I'm Jim Sciutto, in for Wolf Blitzer. It is 1 p.m. here in Washington, 8 p.m. in Moscow, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thanks very much for joining us. Up first today, facing the fallout. The White House in severe damage control mode as President Trump faces a strong backlash from his summit with Vladimir Putin. The president will make remarks on the Putin summit at the top of the next hour. We're going to bring that to you live. The president came under blistering criticism for siding with Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies about Russia's attack on the 2016 election. Critics called his comments disgraceful, shameful, and embarrassing. And that was just from the Republicans. Even the conservative Wall Street Journal said the president projected weakness. The editorial board writing, quote, Monday's joint press conference was a personal and national embarrassment. On stage with the dictator whose election meddling has done so much harm to his presidency, Mr. Trump could not even bring himself to say he believed his own intelligence advisors like Dan Coats over the Russian strongman. Let's bring in CNN White House reporter Sarah Westward. She's at the White House. Sarah, President Trump initially apparently pleased with the news conference, with the summit, even though there was no mention, for instance, of many of Russia's crimes, including the shoot-down of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, which I'm mentioning because it was shot down 4 years ago today, killing all 298 people on board. What is the president tweeting about this morning?
Well, Jim, President Trump showing no signs of backing down from his performance in Helsinki yesterday, despite the fierce bipartisan backlash that has been building over the past 24 hours. Trump defending his summit with Putin this morning, tweeting, "While I had a great meeting with NATO raising vast amounts of money, I had an even better meeting with Vladimir Putin of Russia." Sadly, it is not being reported that way. The fake news is going crazy. Of course, setting aside the fact that Trump's NATO meeting was also itself controversial, it was the president's comments in a press conference after that summit with Putin that has caused even some of his top supporters to describe his treatment of the U.S. intelligence community as a serious mistake. Now, Republican criticism has ranged from describing this as a missed opportunity for Trump to calling his comments disgraceful and even suggesting that the president was potentially manipulated by Russian intelligence. Trump so far not offering any clarity to his remarks, but like you mentioned, we'll be seeing him at the top of the next hour, and perhaps he will explain the thinking behind his press conference strategy.
Sarah Westwood there at the White House, and if you're tempted to think it's purely partisan, those were Republicans sitting in the House, among them who were criticizing the president, raising those hard questions. House Speaker Paul Ryan, the speaker, he spoke out against the president's comments as well. He had a very different characterization of Putin and Russia. Listen to what he said just a short time ago.
Vladimir Putin does not share our interests. Vladimir Putin does not share our values. We just conducted a year-long investigation into Russia's interference in our elections. They did interfere in our elections. It's really clear.
That was Speaker Ryan there. Manu Raju, our Capitol Hill senior congressional correspondent. He's up there on Capitol Hill. Manu, it was interesting. So Ryan certainly did not pull punches when it came to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, but he did not take a shot at the president himself. Why is that?
Yeah, this is the line that Republicans have been trying to draw. They want to be tough on Russia, but they also don't want to get crosswise with the president. And one thing that I tried to ask Paul Ryan about was the finding that was in the House Intelligence Committee's report that disputed what the intelligence community concluded, that Vladimir Putin wanted Donald Trump to become president. Well, Vladimir Putin himself said at that press conference yesterday he did want Trump to become president. I asked Paul Ryan if that was a mistake at all by the House Republicans to assert otherwise. He would not go there. He said that the Republicans found fault with the methodology used by the intelligence community in making that conclusion. Similarly, other Republicans are weighing a wide range of options to respond. Some say there should be no response. Some say there should be more sanctions. Some believe there should be a symbolic response, reaffirming its support for the intelligence community. Nevertheless, there are some Republicans, even some Trump allies, like Congressman Pete King of New York, who said the president made a mistake.
The president is wrong on that. I agree with the president. There's no evidence of collusion, but there's overwhelming evidence of meddling by the Russians. Everyone I've spoken to in the administration, both administrations, accepts that view. I think the president feels if he makes any concession on that, somehow that gives credence to collusion. But there's not. These are two separate issues. He's got to realize that. And it's also definitely wrong to in any way be suggesting any moral equivalency between the U.S. and Russia. To me, it's a terrible mistake, and he's got to correct it.
And King also stood by that House Intelligence Committee finding. He sits on that committee, and he said he absolutely stands by the finding, questioning whether or not Putin wanted Trump to win, despite Putin's own words yesterday. He said he doesn't believe anything Putin has to say. But, Jim, also today we're hearing a lot of calls, particularly from Democrats, for these national security officials in the Trump administration to testify publicly and explain exactly what was agreed to behind closed doors. Some Republicans, like Bob Corker of Tennessee, do want to bring in people like Mike Pompeo. So we'll see if that plays out in the coming days here, Jim.
Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, thanks very much. Let's get some more insight now from our panel. We have Jeff Mason. He's White House correspondent for Reuters. He was out there with the president. CNN Global Affairs analyst Kimberly Dozier, senior political reporter Neil Malika Henderson, and our chief political analyst Gloria Borger. So, Gloria, you and I have sat next to each other here at this table countless times after shocking moments. I think it is very fair to say that this moment was different in that the president has taken shots at a whole host of American institutions before, but to stand next to the man who orchestrated this attack on the election and say the same thing and, in fact, agree with him, that is substantively different. The question is, will the reaction be different?
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, we've heard the words. We've heard the Democrats call for stronger sanctions, for testimony from the national security officials. I think they want some kind of transcripts or notes from the translator. They would like to see what was there. You do have Marco Rubio and Dick Durbin calling for more sanctions. Democrats saying we've got to protect Mueller. We've got to do that. We've got to figure out ways to do that. But the Democrats are hamstrung. They don't control the Congress. And Republican leader Mitch McConnell, while coming out and saying, yeah, you know, the Russians are not our friends,
through a spokesman,
he hasn't come out and said this is what we need to do. Republicans are mortified and they're embarrassed and they want to find a way to limit the president's running room, but they haven't had the guts to go out there yet and say, we are going to do this and we're going to tie the president's hands.
Truth. In the United States of America, the intelligence community can't necessarily check the president.